Isn't that a nice theme song? Sometimes I just sit here and listen to it. It's me, but you probably figured that out by now. I'm doing well, and I don't know why. I just kind of am. It happens. You do everything right, and guess what? Sometimes life is just going well, and I'm kind of in one of those phases right now. So today a couple of days ago I interviewed my friend Dr. Ildiko Tabori. She's a psychologist, hence the title, Doctor. She's earned it. She's not just a psychologist, though. She counsels comedians. I mean, she has a whole variety of clients and patients, but she specializes in comedians because she helped develop the program at the Laugh Factory where comedians can get free counseling. She tells that whole story. That's pretty interesting how she got to be front and center on that whole project of Jamie Masada's. We talk about the Menendez brothers. She worked on a project involving the Menendez brothers. She talks about that. She talks about the sheriffs very candidly, and being married to one, and aging, and dog walk therapy. We talk about a bunch of things, and we sort of bounce in and out of conversation too. Just like two friends hanging out. It's kind of fun. I mean, I hope it's not indulgent. I hope you don't go, we don't need to hear Joe babbling with his friend. I don't think there's babbling. I did a little bit of judicious editing. I took out a little bit of babbling because she and I do, rah, 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 rah. So I took a little of that out. But I think it's informative. I think it's insightful. You'll also notice it goes from light to dark inside of an hour. She was facing her west window at her house, and the sun was going down. So don't be alarmed by that. That she wasn't having a slow power outage. That was the sun going down, Ms. Streisand. Old joke. Anyway, please enjoy this interview with my friend Dr. Ildiko Tabori.
Dr. Tabori, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dr. Dungan?
No. Let's not toss that term around. You earned it.
You earned it. You know how you are credited in my dissertation as Dr. Joe Dungan.
What?
You didn't know that?
Come on.
You gave me the best gift ever, which was editing my really, really long and boring dissertation.
Yeah.
And so I credited you as Dr. Joe Dungan in my thank yous.
I don't remember that. Did I add that as an edit?
No, because I wanted to surprise you. Surprise.
Yeah, it's quite a surprise. I probably crossed that out. But, congratulations on being a doctor. And how long have we known each other? Are you allowed to say? Because you've got like an image to uphold, and you still can pass for.
I've known you since I was -1.
Yeah.
So,
Long time.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. No, how long have we known each other? You actually know.
It's 30 years this month.
30 years July?
Yeah, this month.
Wow. I really was -1.
Yeah, you were -1.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And you were 2, so.
Thank you. Bless you for saying that. How did you know, you're born here, you're born in Culver City, right?
No, I was actually born in Hollywood, but yes, I am a born and raised LA girl.
And when did you know you wanted to be a therapist?
When I was talking to a friend of mine, actually a former roommate of mine, her sister, who you and I actually both know, Mari, not my kid, Mari, but the other Mari, who was going to grad school to become a marriage and family therapist. And I'm sitting in her living room one day and I go, that sounds like fun. I think I'll do that. So I did. And then in the middle of my master's program, I had to take a class on psychodiagnostic testing, which is all the psych assessment stuff that I actually did on you way back when.
I remember that.
And fun fact, Joe to this day still has the highest IQ I have ever tested, and I've tested a lot.
As he makes his Dumbo face.
So in that, I realized, oh wait, I have to get a PhD in order to test, because only psychologists test. So that's what I did.
And I remember you were in school for what seemed like forever.
Yeah, it felt like forever.
It was, so you get the undergraduate, 4 years undergrad, and then a master's in what?
I have two masters, actually. I have a master's in psychology and another master's in clinical psychology, and then a PhD in clinical psychology.
There's two different masters, one for psychology and one for clinical psychology.
Yeah.
Is there any over?
Well, yeah. So the clinical psychology master's came first, and that was when I was in that marriage and family therapy graduate program. And then when I realized, well, I really need to keep going. And so I entered into a doctoral program. And as with all doctoral programs, you earn a master's in that process. So now I have two masters. So then I got a psychology master's, and that second psychology master's is more research based, even though I don't consider myself a researcher. I've researched, I do research, but I don't consider myself that.
It's all very heavy.
Yeah.
It's very heavy to say I do research, but I don't consider myself a researcher. It's already over my head.
Yeah. Well, I'm not. So there's two camps in psychology. There's the clinicians, which is what I am, and then there's the academics, the researchers. So, and they look down on the clinicians, and the clinicians go, well, we make more money than you. So that's where we're at.
Come on, we're all here to help, doctors.
Yeah, yeah, we're all here to help.
Why so judgy? Part of this talk show for me is about trying to figure out those moments when people make these decisions. When you were how long did your doctoral program take? Didn't it take like 5 years?
My doctoral program was 5 really long, miserable years. Yeah, it was unpleasant.
Did you know it was going to be 5 years when you entered?
I did know. I did know it was going to be 5 years. I remember the first day I stepped on campus and go, I have to be here for 5 years. And I was, and I did it. Graduate programs are tough. Not necessarily the academia per se. It's more just about the hoops of fire that you have to jump through.
For example, I remember don't you have to get people to approve just the idea for your thesis?
Yeah, you have to present it. You have to, and it's actually a dissertation. So I had to do a master's thesis and then a doctoral dissertation. So you have to approve it. So I had the wonderful luck of having a former colleague who was a psychologist then, and I was entering grad school, say to me, the worst part of grad school that you will ever experience is managing your dissertation committee. So manage it wisely and choose wisely. And I chose wisely. It still had a little bit of trouble, but I had for the most part, a great committee. And I have said that to every graduate student since then.
Now by committee, you mean the professors that you choose to present to?
Yeah, so a committee, they're the ones who say, oh, okay, your research was good or bad. So they're the ones that you do what's called a preliminary defense, which is you present the study that you're going to do, that really long study. So it's the first 3 chapters of that study. If you remember reading it in detail, I'm sure.
Every word.
Yeah, yes. Every brilliant word now. And then they ask you a bunch of questions, and then they say yay or nay. And then if they say yay, then you go do the study. And then when you're done with the study, they read it, and then you do what's called a final defense. And so then you present the study to them. And
then you get to go write it.
And then no, that's after you write it.
Oh, that's after you write it.
Write it first, and then you present it.
And then it can still be rejected.
Yeah, but when you get to that point, it's like if they reject it when you're presenting it, because they read it. So you have the chair and then 2 committee members. And so your chair is the one who's supposed to work with you closely. And I had a great chair. And okay, Doggy wants to go down. Bye, Johnny Carson. And they work with you very, very closely and guide you kind of in that process. So, and I lucked out. So my chair and one of my committee members were best friends. And I actually used a small portion of their data on the dissertation. So.
At any point during this, like when you started this 5-year program, did you think to yourself, oh, dear God, I've made a mistake? Or did you think, I'm going to get through this, but, oh, it's going to suck?
Every single day.
Really?
Yeah.
It was that.
Yeah, it was, and it was a difficult process. And it was at, a very different place in my life. I got married my first year of grad school. And then my mom got diagnosed with cancer the second year, and you remember that, the second year of grad school. And so, she had a very, very bad cancer. And so it was really stressful. It was a really, really stressful time. And then, still having to hold things together, being a brand new wife, being a daughter with a sick mom. My sister was living overseas, so it was just kind of me having to hold all these things together. And it was a lot of, falling apart on those days. And then you're working long hours because you're in school, and I'm still working at the jail and all these things. And then throwing a dissertation on top of that. So
What were you doing at the jail again?
I was working in mental health, and I was, working with the inmates, evaluating inmates, providing therapy for inmates, doing crisis interventions with inmates.
Now that sounds stressful.
Yeah. The inmates were less stressful than the law enforcement there, looking back on it.
Really?
It was like a lot of push me, pull you kind of thing. It's like, you go in and you work with, this inmate population, and you're there to support them because, being incarcerated, it's really trying. And then put on top of that, your dignity is stripped from you, right? And then you're treated with disrespect because you have law enforcement, need I say more, that, just is making you feel bad because you're in jail for whatever reason. So, it's, they're two sides of the same coin.
Well, and yet, you worked there, and obviously it's your job to provide counseling. Your job was different than law enforcement's job, but still you had to refrain from forming judgments, because I'm sure some of these police officers there get very burned out and get aggressive and that sort of thing. And I'm sure there must have been moments where you thought to yourself, oh, wow, another guy who murdered someone. Okay, I will do my best to talk to this person.
Well, right. But, when you're working in, with the law enforcement, and I remember this vividly, working there, and all the, LA County Sheriff deputies and everything were saying, it's our house. It's our house. The jail is their house. Like somehow they pay the property tax on it, right? And you had to align with them, or mental health is bad, with law enforcement, oh yeah, we don't deal with mental health because it's for the crazies over there. And so you had to like align with them or keep your mouth shut. And I was really young, at the time. And, when you're that young, you don't know how to set your boundaries and speak up. And, I went into that environment with, these big wide eyes, and like, I want to help these people. And I was working a lot more with the women than the men. But, I'm like, I wasn't that naive that I'm like, I'm going to save them. But, it's like, I can be a source of support. I can be, a kind, respectful, helping hand. And, and then, with law enforcement just coming down on you, it was hard. So
can you talk about them coming down on you? Like what sorts of things when you say coming down on you?
Well, if you showed too much empathy for an inmate, they'd look down on you, or they'd say things to you like, they're not, you're compromising safety or things like that. Or, we want that inmate moved into that area, or we don't think this inmate is mentally ill. And it was kind of this pressure to make certain decisions that, you couldn't always make independently. And so there's a lot of this kickback. So, I remember working there, and, we as an entire mental health department did our best to really try to educate them. And this is, late 90s, early aughts. But it was still, really, really tough.
Were any of them receptive to being educated, or were they largely pushing back on it?
Some were. There were some really amazing people who worked there, amazing law enforcement officers who worked there, who were incredibly receptive. And then there were those who weren't, and, who were just, into, we're cops. So.
How much of that do you think was, I mean, this is fascinating to me also, because I think, you're the psychologist, you tell me, I think a lot of this on their part was projection. A lot of it was going, oh, well, because it's no great secret that there are some people. Pardon?
Don't tell them that.
I don't think it's a great secret that there are some people in law enforcement who could do with a little bit of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to heel toe it here. I don't want to.
A little bit.
Yeah. So do you think some of them saw you as just a threat? Like, oh God, here comes the therapist. I cannot be around this person because deep down I know I need a little bit.
So, I think mental health as a general was seen as a threat for a long time. But then remember too, I married one of them, and then they're like, well, welcome to the family. And I was like, okay. And in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm young, and okay, so I'm now welcomed into this family. But I remember in the back of my head, I was going, but is this a family I want to be in?
Whoa, that's heavy. And then you're working around these people all the time.
I worked around them every day, and then I'd come home to one every night. And it was, it was really hard. And it was a lot of, keeping my mouth shut. At the same time, though, I was, in my late 20s, and, you're not really finding your strength and stability in your own voice back then.
I'm still looking for it.
I have found mine, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Good on.
But it, it was really, it was a really tough experience. Not that I would ever want to go back working there at this point, but I think I would approach it very differently now that I have reached that, half century mark in life, and that I'm not afraid to say things.
You know what? I find that also as I get older, and it's liberating as hell. And then are you like me? Do you realize, wait, what was I waiting for?
Right.
No one gives a shit that you're starting to speak your mind all of a sudden.
Right. And
there wild.
I love the aging process partially. I don't like, the aches and pains and stuff and that come with it, but I like the fact that you don't give a crap what anybody says, or what anybody thinks about you anymore. It's like, I don't like you. Okay.
Yeah. Less and less. And also, I don't want to get all hippy dippy here, but we can talk about the cosmos and our connection to the universe. I find those people sort of mysteriously drop off.
Yeah.
I don't actually have to say to them, hey, I think this is toxic. I just sort of change, and then they just sort of stop talking to me.
Yeah. Sometimes we just kind of, withdraw a little bit. I think as we get older, we tolerate less and less bullshit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a marvelous combination in my case, because not only am I tolerating it less, I'm finding so much more of it.
Yeah. And it's like, I just don't care.
I can't even, I think there should be a corner of the gym dedicated to working on giving a shit. And I'm never going to go because I just.
You know what? I think in life in general that we need to give less of a shit sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Really, it's like, I with my patients now, I say a lot. I'm like, why do you care if that person is talking behind your back? Do you know what they're saying? No. Then why do you care? Let them.
And the thing is, and I don't need to explain this to you, is those are revelations that a person kind of has to come to on their own. That's kind of the magic trick of psychology. You can't
shake that into them.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to give you A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I. What goes there?
Right.
Come on, you can do it.
Right.
That's kind of how it goes. So I've had those revelations myself, going, oh wait, what happens if I stop caring? What happens if I stop doing that? And then you find that you've gotten rewired, and all of a sudden, these habits you used to have just seem like a foreign language to you almost. Like, wait, why did I do so much of that before?
Right. Right. And, and it's a great revelation. It's like, why did I care so much? Why did I not say no more often? I love, I want to just jump on this right now. Simone Biles today, she withdrew from team competition. Why? Because she's not in a good headspace. And she goes, I just need to. And I'm loving that. Like, good for her. She doesn't owe the world anything.
No.
She doesn't owe the US anything.
No.
The only person she owes anything to is herself. So good for her. And I was watching this interview with her this morning, and they're like, okay, but you can do the individual events. Are you going to do that? She goes, I don't know. I'm taking it one day at a time. Good for her.
Why do you think, just a little background on this, just for people who aren't aware, she's not in a good space right now. Is it PTSD from Larry Nassar and all that stuff?
I don't know Simone Biles. I would love to know Simone Biles.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I don't know why.
I'll bring over the wine. We can all just hang out and chat. She sounds amazing.
You know what? I think she and I would be BFFs. I was a gymnast. She's a gymnast. No, I mean, again, I don't know. I can only say what she has said, and what she said was that there's a lot of pressure on her for being on top, being the GOAT. She's the GOAT, and she's even more of a GOAT in my book today because of this. But it's a lot of pressure. I can't imagine that kind of pressure.
No.
I can't imagine that. And I give her kudos.
Yeah, because she's stripping everything else aside and saying to herself, I need this now. Forget that the world is watching. Forget, I don't have to be Tom Brady. I don't need another ring. Especially her. I mean, she's already proven what she can do.
She's amazing.
And if it's anybody else, if anyone, like a 40-hour-a-week day job, if they're suddenly in a bad headspace, what do? You go to HR and you say, I need a little time off. I got to go talk to someone.
Right. But so many people don't.
That's what's so amazing about it. That she's got this, I mean, the Olympics only happen every 4 years, and it just coincides with this moment where she feels there's too much pressure, and she says, you know what? The pressure is going to wreck me. To hell with the events.
Right.
I got to go take care of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So good on her.
Yeah. So, I love that. The last patient I just had, I mean, this was exactly what we were talking about. She's like, I'm really stressed out with work. I'm like, say no. And she's like, I didn't say it just that bluntly, but she's, I go, here are your options. You can talk to your union. You can talk to your HR. You can do this, that, and the other. But, she's like, I'm working through lunch. I'm like, don't work through your lunch. You're not getting paid for that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, don't do your overtime. And they didn't approve overtime. Don't do it. You're worth more than that. Say no. So we're working on learning to say no. And that no is not a dirty word.
We have to be, as I said years ago, we got to be the CEO of our own corporation.
I love that.
Yeah, you can have that.
Thank you.
Also, another thing I've done lately is I have my own constitution.
Oh.
I've written out rules of my own constitution about how to be treated, how not to react to certain things, because I used to react a certain way, and I'm trying to strip that shit away and react a different way to things and situations and so on.
I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that over wine. I mean, that's the talk show everyone wants to see, is when you and I 1.5 glasses in, the conversation is a lot less formal. I'm liking your idea more and more when you said, sure, I'll do your talk show. How about you and I sit right here and we'll put the laptop up and I'm going,
I think that we should.
We should. This is good. This is good. I mean, I think you have a lot to say that people are going to be interested in. And we've got.
And I'm not drunk. Imagine what I'll say when I am.
I think there'd be a lot of editing.
Or not. But I think that would be a good idea. We've had some wonderful nights in my backyard.
Talking, everybody. Wonderful nights talking.
With wine and cheese.
We're just friends. If your boyfriend's watching, all we've done is nothing. It's just friends.
Well, you make sense of me dancing.
Yeah. Are you willing to admit to that?
Yeah, well, it's okay.
Can I say publicly, you dance like a very white woman?
Well, according to my 23andMe, I am a very white woman.
Okay. All
I
right.
am the Karen. I am the quintessential middle-aged white lady. I am Karen.
You dance like a Karen.
No, I don't. I'm not that bad. My sister dances like the Karen. My sister does the Carlton from the 80s.
Really? I didn't know this.
She doesn't do a good Carlton. She does a bad Carlton.
Oh, I've got to see this. I've known her how long, and I've never.
Oh my God! So we need next time Gabi's in town, we need to get her dancing. We'll have dance party in the yard, and she does like the head shake thing.
Oh, I will make sure my camera is fully charged for that one.
It's hilarious.
Okay, I bow down then. Yeah. You no longer dance like a Karen.
No, I resent the Karen dance. I am the Karen demographic. Have I wanted to speak with managers before? Yes. My goal in life is to use the benefits of Karen. For example, so I have this patient. She is right now one of my heroes. She's, 27 years old, recently diagnosed with cervical cancer. She's kicking ass. She just started her treatment last week. She's amazing. She is just really, really tough. And she is having to butt up against, the insurance companies and all this kind of stuff, and making sure her oncologist listens to her and the technicians listen to her. And she's learning how to navigate this and advocate for herself. And then she started treatment last week, and she's like, I'm so exhausted. I'm like, you know what? Part of what mental health is, we advocate for you. And this is where my Karen can kick in. So if you need me to scream and yell at somebody and talk to somebody's manager about, getting you connected to this resources and that resource, and, I'm happy to do so. You just tell me when. So that's when the Karen can come in good.
And that's a good quality in a mental health advocate, I would think. Because it's more than just giving advice. There are those moments. There are people, and I know you have counseled one of them, a comedian. We can mention his name, I think. Who you helped him once. Didn't you go to Bed Bath and Beyond to help him get bed sheets and things because he just moved into an apartment and he wasn't quite. You remember?
No, I think I directed him. Did I actually go to Bed Bath and Beyond with him? I think I may have directed him. I don't remember. I'm at that age where memory fails. But I may have. But I remember sitting with him, and because he needed to move because he was in this, he had been released from the hospital. And he had lost his apartment, and he was finding a new apartment. He was in this crappy, teeny tiny bachelor, not even a studio, a bachelor in Hollywood on Hollywood Boulevard. It was, and sleeping on a inflatable mattress. And I'm like, you know what, you need to find yourself a home. And so we sat down and went through, whatever those apartment services are. And I'm like, okay, here and here and here and here. So go look at these. And so he called and made appointments and looked at all these apartments. So, so that's, I remember what we did on that one. So.
And I mean, it's good that you recognize that some people need that little push, because as you know, some people are pretty functional, and then some people are like, you got to brush your teeth. You have to sort of hold their hand through some of it. So.
Right. And that was tough. Yeah. So.
And this is a comedian, and let's get on this subject. How did you end up working with comedians? Tell that whole story.
I said yes.
Sure.
So one of my favorite people in the whole wide world is a wonderful psychologist named Dr. James Harris. And Dr. James Harris is also a comedian. And this was, James was working as my psych assistant for a while before he was licensed. And he said, hey, would you be interested in something like this? I'm like, sure, why not? And that was it. And he connected me with Jamie Masada, who is the owner and brilliant owner of the Laugh Factory. And that was 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago.
Now, when you say interested in something like this, what exactly was this that Jamie Masada was trying to do?
So this was a few months after Greg Giraldo died of a drug overdose. And if you watch Greg Giraldo's comedy, his stand-up, he went from, being open and lively. And Greg Giraldo was this amazing, brilliant comedian who was a lawyer. And he's like, I don't like law. I'm going to do stand-up. Good for him. And he was doing that. And then I don't remember the exact circumstances, but he started to get into abusing substances, drugs, and he was getting really, really depressed. Obviously, the depression came first because, happy people don't abuse drugs, right? And you saw him getting angrier and angrier on stage. And then, he died of an overdose. I don't know if it was intentional or not. Who knows? Nobody was there. And Jamie was, I think, one of the last people to see him and meet with him over at, wonderful Greenblatt's next to the Laugh Factory on Sunset. And, I think a day or two later, he was found in his apartment or his home or wherever, dead. And so it was that. And then, this came shortly after Richard Jennings, too, which was a few years before that. Jamie Masada is the godfather of comedians. I mean, he is the patriarch. He's the one that holds this comedy family together. And I admire him so greatly. So he's like, you know what? This is more than I am trained to deal with, because I'm not trained to deal with it. I can be there as a source of support, but we need somebody like this. And so I think he was talking to James one day, and James goes, I might know somebody. Because James hadn't been licensed yet. And so he's like, yeah, I can't do it. And he is now doing it with me. But, and that was it. So I walked in and I came in. And the only reason I think Jamie really hired me was that I really am a huge fan of comedy and comedians. I remember listening to, Stephen Wright on vinyl.
Yeah.
Right?
That album was revolutionary at the time.
Seriously. And
no one heard comedy like that.
Yeah. And what 11-year-old falls in love with Johnny Carson?
You.
Yeah. So, I really, and I would sneak watching, The Tonight Show, at 11. I was, sneaking in watching SNL at that time. And I just absolutely love comedians and comedy and just the brilliance in comedians. Brilliance. So.
I hope to get there someday.
I do. You are there, my dear.
Oh, thank you. I'm learning.
I have always been a Joe fan. I have.
Thank you. I'm learning to see.
Well, I know you remember meeting me first. I vaguely remember that. But I remember when I re-met you at CSUN.
Yeah.
And I went and saw A Christmas Card.
Oh, yeah. That was a play that I wrote.
And you directed it?
I did not direct it, no.
Okay.
John Brules. Shout out to John Brules for directing it. He nailed it.
Woo-hoo. It was brilliant. It made me laugh so hard that I cried. And I remember, we were in that, what was that, the studio theater?
Yeah, that funky black box theater with the creaky bleachers.
Yeah, and it was like theater in the round.
Like half.
Theater
like
in the semicircle.
Yeah, semicircle, kind of.
Theater in the semicircle. And I watched it and I remember just laughing so hard. I don't remember who I was there with, but I was laughing so hard. And I'm like, who wrote that? And I was talking to whoever I was with at the time. Maybe it was Eric Brown. I have no idea. But I'm like, who wrote that? And you come walking around the corner. It's like, oh yeah, that's Joe Dungan. He wrote that. And I'm like, oh my God. So that I remember, because that to me was one of the funniest things I've ever seen to this day.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. This is another thing I'm learning to do, is just take compliments.
Good. That's a good thing.
Thank you. So this is me taking a compliment.
You're really good at taking compliments.
I'm not at all uncomfortable.
It's me.
Back to the Laugh Factory. So you developed a program. It was Jamie paid you to allow any comedian who needed mental health services to schedule time, right?
Yeah. So essentially, yeah. So not initially, it was just, a few sessions, and then they can continue with me if they want to. And so, yeah, and I'm still doing it now, 10 plus years later.
The very first time, the very first night you were there, did you know what to expect? Were you a little intimidated? Where you thought, uh-oh, they're comedians, this could be anything?
Well, the first time I was there, I walk in and, I'm coming in for a job interview. I'm in like professional attire, and I have my resume in a manila folder, and sitting there with a publicist and, me and an LA Times writer, and I didn't know. And they're like, they hired me right then and there. Apparently they hired me before they met me. So I'm like, okay, great. And I remember
my job interview.
It was. I'm like, here are my references, and then, oh yeah, you're hired. You're gonna meet with this person at this time. I'm like, okay, and that was it. Yeah. So, and I think before then I had a brief conversation with Jamie on the phone. I don't know if you remember this, but I had a brief conversation with him on the phone beforehand. We're so irreverent. So I'm talking to him, I'm like driving down the street, and I'm chatting with him, and he's like, okay, so there's gonna be, I can't do Jamie's voice, but all the other comedians can, but there's gonna be some media attention. Is that okay with you? And God, this is how obnoxious I was. I'm like, yeah, I'm cute, I can do it. So yeah, and so that was that. And yeah, I had trial by fire with media. So
now your very first night at the Laugh Factory, because the sessions were at the Laugh Factory, right?
So yeah, in an office upstairs. That's where we started. Now we just see them wherever.
Okay. There's the lounge up there, the VIP lounge, which is really cool. And then that
was actually my first night, and I was hanging out with all the comedians and Jamie, and that was fun.
Yeah.
But
I've been there for a few of those nights.
Yes.
When Dom Herrera holds court, there's nothing like it.
Well, of course. Well, yeah. He is the OG, right?
Yeah.
I love Dom. But yeah, sitting with a patient isn't uncomfortable because I've been doing it for so long. So that's not the uncomfortable part. It's like, oh, I'm in this new environment. And so, that was fine. I didn't know if they were coming back and like, oh, Jamie, we like her, or we don't like her, which is fine. They could have. But yeah, so that in and of itself wasn't uncomfortable, because I'm just went in and I'm going to do my job the way I do my job. And I think what I didn't know that much was what this field was about. I've been a fan, and I'm still a fan, will always be a fan, but I didn't really know that much about comedy. I remember calling you, and I remember calling Keith Middleton and going, tell me everything you know about stand-up comedians, right? And I also, and then, being the researcher that I am, I was talking to Jamie, and like, okay, so is there any articles or any books I should read beforehand? He goes, yeah, you read I'm Dying Up Here, which I did. And then promptly fell in love with Tom Dreesen, who is amazing and brilliant and gorgeous. And so, yes, but I didn't know that much. And the comedians are like, well, we'll teach you about what we do, and you help us. And that's what I've learned. So.
And I know you've gotten some tremendous feedback from the comedians also, as far as like literally saving people's lives.
Oh yeah, hopefully. So
well, I think they've said it. I thought I remember a quote. I think, didn't somebody send you a card or something saying thank you for saving my life or something like that?
Yeah, perhaps.
No,
Not
this is
being
not the
humble, but
time.
I don't remember.
This is not the time for modesty.
I'm not being modest. I just don't remember.
You've saved people's lives, and speaking of comedians and therapy, you have a therapy dog.
I do. Who just
named
left me. Johnny Carson, the therapy dog.
Who's an amazing little dog.
He is. He is an amazing dog. Dumbest dog ever, but you know,
Johnny, don't listen to her.
He's actually trans cat. So
okay, maybe he is, but he's not dumb. He's full of love.
You can be dumb and full of love all at the same time.
Oh, I can? That sounds pretty good.
Yes, he is the sweetest dog ever. You know, he obviously was a rescue, and I had him for 2 days, and he was sitting in my patient's laps. And so I called my accountant and I said, hey, if I make him a therapy dog, can I write him off on my taxes? She goes, absolutely. He became a therapy dog right then and there.
Now, just from a clinical standpoint, can you explain how a dog helps people in therapy?
So when a dog sits on your lap, I mean, it's comforting. You can pet him. It decreases your anxiety. It gives you the cuddles. It gives you a love. Johnny Carson, I mean, he's 11 pounds, 8 pounds of hair. But it's like a weighted blanket. It decreases the anxiety, and he just loves you. I had this one patient who would come in and she would sit on my couch and talk to the dog for 10 minutes before she even acknowledged my existence. So during COVID, actually I kind of did it a little bit before, but I perfected the art of dog walk therapy during COVID.
Do you find people open up more when they're walking?
Yeah.
Can you explain why?
Well, when you're doing something else, you kind of forget the fact that you're sitting in front of a shrink going, oh, wait, I have to talk about my feelings. I actually started doing this at the Laugh Factory. So Johnny Carson's making himself known. I started doing this at the Laugh Factory. So every now and then I'd get a comedian who wasn't talking to me. Go figure. And, you know, it was like pulling teeth. And I always said, I'm not a dentist. So you have to give me something to work with. So I had to figure out a way to make them talk and feel comfortable with me. So what I would do sometimes is go next door to Greenblatt's and we'd sit and eat something, and then they'd start talking because we were doing something else. And so there is a lot of information that can come out of chit chat. So if, you know, we chit chat, I can find out more about you, and then every now and then you'll say something and then I can go in, right? And so, you know, we would chit chat over food. And so I started to do it walking the dog. I'm like, oh, wait, this person's making me pull teeth. Let's take the dog for a walk. And so I would do that. And I found that they were really opening up. And so, and then during COVID, it's like, okay, I guess we can't sit inside together. So let's, you know, you hold the leash, I'll pick up the poo, and people were talking, and it's been really fantastic. And now, you know, we're kind of in this, you know, in between-ish COVID stage, and I offer that. It's like, hey, we can do telehealth, we can do in person, we can do dog walk. So, and some people, like even today, one of my patients, I'm like, you want to sit or you want to walk the dog? And she's like, I want to walk the dog. He's also extremely intuitive. When I'm working with couples, he sits right in the middle of the couple. And then he goes over to the couple who needs him, the member of the couple who needs him most. It's amazing. It's consistent.
Weird.
It's amazing.
That's a gift.
It truly, I mean, you know, I had an old boyfriend who once told me that if I ever get audited by the IRS about the dog, bring the dog to the audit.
Because it'll soften up the auditor.
Right. And that we don't think he's a certified therapy dog. I'm like, well, here's his certification, and now he's sitting on your lap. Do you feel better? Yes. So.
Excellent point. Now, coinciding with you becoming a therapist for comedians, there seemed to be an uptick in the amount of media coverage you got because you were in the paper a few times, and you've actually done some television.
I've done television. I've done every media outlet you can imagine at this point. Al Jazeera.
You were on Al Jazeera?
I did Al Jazeera. I've done NPR. I've done Al Jazeera. I did whatever the Good Morning America equivalent of the UK is. I forgot what it was called. So yeah, that was fun. That was one of my first ones.
Now, are these you talking about national stories related to comedians?
A lot of times I get called in. Obviously, you Google me, psychology, comedy, me. So I get called in to do that most of the time. But every now and then I get called in. So today I got called in to talk about Britney Spears, which was fantastic because I love Britney. But a few years back, I got a call from an amazing woman named Nancy Saslow, who has a production company called Meg TV or something to that effect. And I love Nancy. And she was doing a documentary on the Menendez brothers called Eric Tells All. And their original expert, psychology expert, ended up having emergency surgery. So somebody recommended me, and they called me and they said, hey, we'd like you to come in and be a talking head for this documentary on the Menendez brothers. And I said, sure, no problem. And they're like, okay, can you do it in 2 days? I'm like, yeah, I can do it in 2 days. And so I did do it in 2 days. And so what was interesting is, whenever this happened, 1989, because Eric Menendez and I are about the same age, and he went to Beverly Hills High, I believe. And so I remember when I was in high school seeing him at a couple parties and going, oh, he's cute, who is he? And then this happened, and then I'm like, oh wait, that was the cute guy at the party.
Whoa, that's scary.
Yeah. So when I say I knew Eric Menendez, I knew Eric Menendez. I didn't know Eric Menendez. I remember following this back in the early mid-90s. And I remember like believing what the media was saying. It's like, oh yeah, they're making this up and they weren't abused. And I'm like, okay. Fast forward, 25 years later, in those 48 hours, I watched what every like TV, made for TV movie, remember those MOWs, right? And listened to every podcast and researched everything online about the Menendez brothers. And I'm like, and then based on all my knowledge and experience now, I was like, wow, they were abused. They were really abused. And so I did that. And then they called me again last year in COVID to do another one on the Menendez brothers, which was really interesting too. And and that was going back to, my criminal psychology roots.
That's what I was going to ask you about, because I don't think just any psychologist could study the Menendez brothers and piece together, oh, obviously they were abused, therefore this, that, and the other. But you did have a background in criminal psychology. I remember weren't you fascinated with corpses? Murders. It was murders. You were into murders.
I've always liked true crime.
Okay.
No. My sister, the corpse thing, she's a criminalist. She was a CSI person.
Okay.
So that's my sister. That's actually what she did for a living for a long time. But no. Corpses are but I do like true crime. True crime is interesting to me. And, my daughter, independent of me, is like, oh yeah, I like true crime. And so, we share podcast information. I'm like, I like this podcast. And loving Law and Order SVU. How
many decades has that been on now?
22.
Good God.
And I love Mariska Hargitay because she's Hungarian and gorgeous. But yeah, I really was fascinated with it. I think my original thought when I went into this field was to be an FBI profiler because, that happens. But I don't want to go in the FBI, but I don't want to do that. I have an interest in true crime. I have an interest in comedy. I have an interest in a whole lot of things. Law and Order, SVU.
But it's cool that these interests overlap your professional career.
Yeah, and then obviously sports too. So being the daughter of an Olympic athlete,
daughter of a guy who, nothing, just held the world record in the 1500 meter at one point.
Third dude to run the sub 4 minute mile, right?
Yeah, whatever, so, that guy,
the guy whose voice you still do, and
don't do his voice. He does my voice.
Fun fact: one time Joe called me as my dad. I had no idea who actually called me, if it was my dad or if it was Joe.
That was fun times.
That was really funny.
That was fun times. The best was at his party, and he was coaching at USC at the time, and only some of his students showed up.
Yeah.
So they found out I could imitate him. So we borrowed one of the phones, and they're like, "Oh, call this guy, call this guy." So they would call up someone else, and I would pretend to be your dad, going, "How come you're not here?" Oh, sorry, coach. They were so apologetic.
And they would run and show up. We're on our way.
Right. And this time, bring the vodka, bring the big bottle. And that throws them. They're like, "What, coach? You want us to bring vodka? I'm 19, coach. I can't get." Shut up. That's excuses. And then I would break and hand the phone over. Yeah, it was fun times.
Yeah, no, I mean, you are a total mimic. I mean, it's just brilliant. And it's funny just listening. I was like, oh my God, that's my dad.
And I fooled your sister once too.
Oh yeah, big time.
That was awesome.
Big time.
That was awesome. Look at you living the career, huh? We'll do this again. I kind of like your idea next time where we just sit next to each other on the weatherproof couch or whatever, the patio furniture.
Yes.
And we'll set up your
the
laptop.
Wine and the cheese, and
we'll get out
then I'll dance.
Crudités. That's a very special episode. That might get.
It's like a Blossom, very special episode.
It might get more views than any episode I've had, or we might get letters. I don't know.
Well, it depends on what I'm wearing when I'm dancing.
Wow, you have a professional reputation to uphold. You know this, right?
But I'm also at that age where I give a fuck.
And the interview has come full circle. Ildi, thanks so much for the time. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Love you.
You too, we will talk soon.
I hope you liked that interview. I mean, I don't hope for any kind of insecure reason. I don't think I'm insecure about it. I think it's more of a taking pride in my work sort of thing. Like, I mean, yeah, you can argue that it's a hobby at this point because a lot of people, I'm not really making money at it, and it is kind of a dream, to be a talk show host. But I just feel like I should, put my best foot forward, just as a kind of craftsmanship notion. Just the idea you should take pride in your work is what I'm saying. And what I chose to do during this interview is she complimented me a lot. She flattered me a lot on some of my achievements, and I chose to leave them in. I didn't. I don't. Again, it's not a. Yeah, your friends obviously should be proud of you, but she said a few of them out loud, and I don't hear them very often, and it's kind of weird for me. So, that was uncomfortable. And then comes the big decision: do I leave them in or not? Because it is my show, and it's ultimately my choice. It's your choice how you want the outward expression of all of your creations to be, and I ultimately decided to leave them in. And it is uncomfortable, but I think it's important that we live in that place of discomfort, because that's how we grow. At least that's my takeaway based on conversations I've had before. Anyway, I know the hour's up, so thanks.
Okay, Harriet, can you put out the cigarette, please? It's time to start the show. Shall I do the countdown also? I didn't mean to interrupt. Oh, is this happy hour? Fine, Harriet, I'll do it.
What's Harriet drinking?
I don't know, hooch, something. Anyway, and we're live. Dr. Tabori, how are you?
Love you.
You too, babe. We will talk soon. And we're
Bye.
clear. Thanks, Harriet. Useless load.